Today, we're talking anxiety in our kids. What does it look like? How does it show up in our young ones, in our teens? What can we do to help them? And when do we go outside and get help? When do we look at medication, at counseling, at therapy? When do we do that? On the podcast today, everything about anxiety. Anxiety in kids doesn't always look like anxiety. And your 4-year-old isn't going to be like, excuse me, mom, I think I feel very anxious right now. No, that's never going to happen. Many parents, we expect to see nervousness. We expect to see worry or hear our kids talking about feeling scared. And sometimes it does show up that way. Sometimes our kids, especially if you've got one that is a talker that talks about everything, they're going to talk about how they're scared about this, school starting or hockey or dance. You're going to hear that coming out of them verbally, but sometimes you don't hear it at all. Sometimes it shows up as stomach aches, recurring stomach aches, irritability, meltdowns. You see an increase of tantrums, of crankiness, headaches. And let me say, these are real stomach aches and real headaches. So if we're tempted to say that's not real, that's anxiety, let me tell you, no, it is real. They really have a headache. They are not lying about the headache. They really have a stomach ache. It is real. It is the body's response to that stress, to that anxiety. So yes, it is real, but it's not really a headache, it's anxiety. If that makes any kind of sense. For younger kids, it might look like clinginess, trouble sleeping, constant reassurance seeking. They might say, "You're coming to get me after school, right? You're coming to get me after daycare, right? I'll see you later, right? Okay. You're going to tuck me in, right? You're going to give me a kiss on my cheek at bedtime." And it's constant and it's super annoying, but it is normal. And that is a sign of some anxiety for sure. A child, like I said, may be constantly talking about the source of their anxiety. I don't want to read. What if I don't like school? What if the teacher doesn't like me? Or they may be, for older kids, when does driver's ed start again? What does that look like again? What do I have to do for this class? So maybe it's in the form of questions, or like one of my kids, they may never talk about the source of their anxiety. One of my children, they would avoid talking it. And then you almost have to become a detective and think, what are they not talking about? They are never talking about driver's ed. They're avoiding it. They don't want to think about it. That is the source of their anxiety. Maybe you notice, okay, they're never talking about school, but they're extra cranky. When it's time to think about school, get ready for school. They're picking fights with their siblings. They're rude and disrespectful to you just before soccer practice. You notice these things. Okay, that could be a sign of anxiety. It's the body's way. When you like in a nutshell, your body is saying this doesn't feel safe. I am unsure. And the brain does not like unpredictability. The brain does not like guessing, just like I am over the right word. The brain doesn't like that. It doesn't like that. It likes safety, security, routine. Routine is really good. So if your child is going through something in life where there's some new, maybe a new schedule, maybe there's a separation and we're spending a week at mom's and a week at dad's, there's a lot of change going on. So the more routine that you can have in your world, the better it is for your child. The brain does not like guessing. It doesn't like change. It doesn't like uncertainty, unpredictability, if that's a word. Your brain doesn't like it. It says, I don't know about this. This does not feel safe. And then we can have an increase in worry, in nerves, in anxiety. So kids don't always say I'm anxious. They might say my tummy hurts or I don't want to go. They refuse to talk about it. So we need to listen between the lines. Back to school, the school year, a new teacher, a new grade, new classmates. Maybe the best friend isn't in your class this year. That is a huge source of anxiety. So just being aware of all of these transitions, they can trigger it all over again. And then we've got to walk our kids through. So it's interesting how kids can seem fine, but then you notice, there's a bit of something going on, when they go to bed. Maybe they seem fine all day, but they go to bed, they can't sleep. And that's when those thoughts rise up. I see this a lot in preteens and teens. Something you can do to help them is actually let's schedule some worry time. This is a bizarre way to help, but I promise you it makes a difference. Let's schedule worry time. We're going to set a timer for 5 to 10 minutes, and we're going to talk about all the things that scare us. Yes, we're going to talk about all the things we don't want to talk about. That's what we do. But what this can help to do is diffuse it for bedtime. So then at night, you're lying in bed, you don't have these thoughts that you've been avoiding kind of creeping up to the surface. And, it's dark, it's quiet, you can't avoid it. What I find a lot of the time with teens, with preteens, with adults is that's when we like to fall asleep watching a show. That's when we want to fall asleep listening to a podcast or an audiobook or our favorite YouTuber, our streamer, because we're avoiding having to think about those things. So something that I can do, and I get it, I say this because I also I feel that. I understand it, but it is better for us. It's better for our brains. It's better for our bodies if we can go to sleep with silence. I know, and I say this knowing I don't like to do this. It is better for us. So schedule 5 to 10 minutes of worry time. Think about the things you don't want to think about. And then when you go to bed, you're not going to have them creeping up on you and keeping you awake at night. The antidote to anxiety is connection. Now, hear me. I'm not saying that there isn't a case. There's a time for medication. There is a time for therapy, and I'll get to that. But the antidote truly to reduce anxiety, to try and get to the root of it, is connection. So before problem solving, before we talk our kids down and say, well, don't worry about that. You're going to be fine. You're going to have a great year. You love soccer. Your best friend isn't in your class, but you can play with them at recess. Before we go into problem solving, let's really focus on connecting. Think about it like your child is walking down the road, and instead of grabbing them and saying, hey, go this way, I want you to think about walking beside them for a second. Just walk beside them and say, oh, that's hard. Are you nervous? How do you feel about the new teacher? How do you feel about the change in schedule? How do you feel about soccer practice or driver's ed or exams coming up? How do you feel about those things? Yeah? Is it hard for you? Like, what are you afraid of? Spend some time connecting before you go into problem solving. Kids need to know that you're the safe person. Kids need to know that they are safe. They need to know that they're not alone. And the message you want your kids to hear is, we will handle this together, right? We will solve this problem. But first, we will connect. Connection is huge. And I promise you, when I do the super nanny, when I go into homes, the very first thing that I'm wanting to work on is connection, because the principle is children want to obey people they're connected to. They want to obey. They want to please. They want, right? They want that safety, that security. They want that connection. So when we focus on connection, I see a reduction in anxiety. I see a reduction in tantrums, in anger, in disrespect, in disobedience. This is a win-win for everyone. So yes, it means a little more work on the front end, but I promise you it's worth it for all of the things. Connection, focus on that. The next thing I want to talk about is some strategies. So we talked about having a 5 to 10 minute worry time. We're going to talk about the things we don't want to talk about. Yay, isn't that fun? The thing nobody wants to do. Try it. I promise you it does help. Another thing you can do, instead of saying don't worry or you're fine, you could say something like, you know what, this sounds really big. Tell me more. And you can ask questions about where they feel it in their body. So you could say, oh, are you scared about that? Yeah. Well, where do you feel that? Do you feel that in your tummy? Do you feel that pushing on your heart? Do you feel that in your throat, in your jaw? Do you feel that in your hands? Do your hands want to move into fists? Ask your kids where they feel that in their body. And you'll be surprised. Kids really can. They can comprehend that. They feel it. You could say, if the child says, I feel it in my tummy, you could say, oh, does it feel like butterflies flying around in your tummy? Or does it feel like a rock, a big heavy rock sitting there. Interesting, right? And it just helps with the whole somatic. So somatic means like the body awareness, and being able to tie in that feeling with physical is huge. It really, really helps. Help kids name the worry, not bury it. And that's really how they learn to face it. So thinking about that feeling in my tummy, the butterflies. Sometimes I'll say, I know this sounds weird, but sometimes I'll say, you know what? If that big rock, that big heavy rock in your tummy could talk, what would it say? And you'll be surprised. Kids will say things like, it will say, I don't want to go to school. It will say, I don't want to leave mom, or I want to spend more time at dad's. It will say things like, I'm afraid I won't make any friends at soccer. It'll say, for teens, you can do this with teens. You know what? If that brick in your stomach could talk, what would it say? It would say, teens have a lot of anxiety over the future. When you think about everything going on in the world, technology, AI, the cost of buying a house, they have a ton of fear, worry, anxiety over, can I make it in the world? Will I have the skills? Everyone around me is saying I'll never afford a house. Everyone around me is saying AI is going to take my job. Can I be successful in this world? Can I make it? These are huge. And it starts with, can I get through this exam? Will I pass math? If I don't pass math, then I'm never going to get a good job. And if I don't get a good job, I won't be able to have a good family. And then I'll never be able to own a house or go on a trip. And then I'll be broke all my life and I'll never have anything good. Do you see? This is the spiral. This is the spiral that happens for sure. So for teens, this is a big deal. So help them to name it, help them not to bury it. Think about that brick. If it could talk, what would it say? Those butterflies, wherever it is they feel it in their body. This is a big deal. It absolutely helps to connect with what's going on physically, and that will reduce the worry, the anxiety. There's something called bridging, which I have talked about before. We will link to other podcasts where I've talked about this. This is things like, when I see you again, you're dropping your child off at school, your child maybe has some anxiety, and you say something like, hey, after school, we are going to have a snack at the counter. So let's get the snack ready. We're going to set it up. We're going to have our fruit snacks and get a piece of fruit and put it there on the counter. And that's what we're going to have when I pick you up after school. Or for teens, it might be, hey, tonight we're going to have spaghetti for dinner. And then let's go over to the soccer field, or let's go for a walk, or let's hang out. Let's have a fire. Let's go sit in a hot tub. And it's the whole idea of bridging is, when I see you again, this is what we'll do. If your child has anxiety over bedtime, what you can do is set the table for breakfast the next morning. Hey, I love you. I'm going to kiss you goodnight. And when I see you in the morning, we're going to have some time together. We're going to sit on a couch and read a book, or we're going to have breakfast, or we're going to go for a car ride. Whatever that is, it's called bridging. Deep breaths really do work. I will be honest, I always thought deep breaths were like, yeah, okay, it's going to help you to calm down if you're angry. But the more I study this, the more I realize I was wrong. Deep breaths tell your brain there's no emergency. So if you can do deep breaths, and there's lots of different ways, but the idea is your exhale needs to be longer than your inhale. So a big, huge exhale literally tells your brain, I don't need to run. I don't need to worry about getting my muscles ready to sprint. I don't need to fight. I don't need to take off. I don't need to hide. It literally is telling your brain there's no emergency. So doing deep breaths ahead of time, having that as a part of your morning routine, just like brushing your teeth, will be a great way to reduce it on the front end, not just when you are in crisis, which is when I used to use it. So I think, utilizing deep breaths and just making that a part of your morning, your evening, your lunchtime, just your regular day can be really, really helpful. For young kids, you can have a little worry box where you get a little box or a little bag, and you write down or you draw pictures of all the things that your child is worried about, and you put them in the worry box. And what I love about this, the point is that it's teaching our kids that the worry is not them. It is not them. It is something that, they are struggling with right now, but it is not who they are. It is separate from themselves. So I am Jen, and I have anxiety about falling. I don't like falling. I don't mind heights, but I don't like falling from them. So that is one of my worries. That is one of my fears. But that is not who I am. And I think sometimes when we struggle with something day after day, for me, it's pretty easy to avoid anything that would have me falling. But for some people, it's travel. It could be cars. It could be school. It could be daycare. It could be work. It could be, driving. Any of these things, you have to look at it all the time. And I think when it's repeated, it's easy to feel like this is who I am. So having a worry box is a good thing. Name the worry, place it in a jar or box. And what you can do with your child is you can actually take out the box, look at the worries. They're still there. Okay, now we're going to put them back in the box and put them on the shelf, and then we're going to go about our day. And notice, isn't that sounding a whole lot like we're going to spend 5 or 10 minutes thinking about the things we don't want to think about? Yeah, it really does. With older kids, instead of a worry box, you can have a journal. You can have them on a whiteboard. These are all my fears. This is everything I'm afraid of. You can do that. You can, on the other side, you could say this is everything I'm excited for. And it's interesting how similar fear and excitement are. They're so close. And sometimes we can take something, and this is a practice, it takes time, but sometimes we can take something we are afraid of and just slightly tweak it and take one step towards excitement. Yeah, I'm going to try out for the school play, and I'm afraid of it, but I'm also really excited to give it my best shot. And wouldn't it be really cool if I made it, right? If I made the cast. That's exciting. So just starting to see it from a slightly different perspective can be helpful. And over time, that gets easier. Both the worry box and the worry journal are great. You can experiment and see what works best for your kids. And you're not off the hook here either. You can have a worry journal. That is something that I can do with clients. You can do that yourself too, and just look it in the eye. Something else that you can do is it's called the worry monster. And I have done counseling where a counselor has said to me as an adult, let's name your fear. If it was a monster, what would it look like? Would it be like black? Does it have a color? Does it have fur? Is it like a snake? Like what? So don't think this is just for younger kids. This is for you too. You can ask questions about the anxiety. Is it big and furry? Is it dark and slinky like a puddle? Is it small and prickly like a cactus? What color is it? Does it make noise? Does it talk? What does it say? What should we say back to it? Yeah, not just for little kids. Think about that. You can talk with your teens about it. What's great about it is then you have a framework when your child, old or young, brings up something to do with anxiety. You could say, sounds like the worry monster is stomping around. What should we say to it? It sounds like the worry monster is here. We should go get the worry box. Yeah, let's make sure we put him back in the worry box. Or let's get our worry journal out. Should we add this one to the worry journal? Like this might be a new one. Should we add it? Is there any we can take away? Maybe one of these things, doesn't scare you anymore. So this isn't just for littles. Sometimes we name our worry monster, and kids can come up with any name they want. Sometimes for teens, we'll call it something like Sir Stress a Lot or What If Wanda. That's been a fun one. So finally, some signs that it's time to get more help. All right, so these are the tools that we have. When do we go outside and, book that doctor's appointment, look at counseling, therapy, perhaps medication? When do we do that? Well, I would say if your child has physical symptoms like headache, stomachache, let's go to the doctor and rule out anything else. Once we've ruled out that it's any other issue, then we can confidently say, okay, this is a psychosomatic. This is the body's way of telling us it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel okay. Once we've ruled that out, then we can really work on the tools. But beyond that, you're working on the tools. You're saying, I don't know, Jen. I don't know if this is working. Here's the thing. When you try all of these tools and you're feeling like anxiety is not lessening over time, and it does take time, but when you notice this isn't really improving, okay, when headaches or stomach aches are getting worse, and again, the doctors have ruled out any physical condition, then we might want to reach out. Absolutely. When your child is withdrawing from family, friends, activities, okay. Sleep is disrupted. It's affecting energy consistently. You're realizing, okay, it's not just a bad day every now and then, it's a good day every now and then. That would be a red flag. When tantrums and anger are out of control and you believe this is to do with anxiety, basically, when it's affecting daily life, this is when we reach out. When you would say, this is now an issue that my child is in failure. I call it that. I say, it's not working. We are in failure. All of the things we're trying, they're not improving over time. It's affecting the daily life of my child. They are avoiding things that would normally bring them joy. They're avoiding things that, are necessary, like school. They're just not going. They're not attending school. If there's any sign of physical harm, like eating disorders or cutting, that could be a symptom of severe anxiety. Then yes, we would reach out for sure. That would be an immediate. We are taking advantage of doctors, psychologists, all those things. And finally, when you feel burnt out yourself, when you feel like I have nothing left to give, I don't know what to do, then that would be a sign to reach out for you and your child to say, okay, I don't know, nothing I'm doing is working. I've been consistently trying. That sometimes is when I can work together with you and whatever the doctor psychologist is doing. If you would say, okay, the issue now, my child is getting the help that they need, but I am in failure. If you would say, honestly, I feel like I'm in failure, then 100%, that's when I can come alongside. I can help you to sustain, to get the motivation and the accountability you need to now go and follow through with the things the doctor, the psychologist, the counselors are encouraging you to do. So this is anxiety in our kids. I do see an increase in anxiety with school. I absolutely do. One of my clients, Michelle in Saskatoon, she would say, my 9-year-old daughter keeps complaining of stomach aches before school. The doctor has ruled out anything physical. There's nothing physically wrong. We worked through this. We set up a routine that was very predictable, helped Michelle's daughter's brain to just relax a little bit. Remember, the brain doesn't like that. It doesn't like surprises. So we're going to have a predictable routine. We set up lots of bridging in the morning and after school, kind of bookend the scary part of the day. So for Michelle's daughter, it was school. So we bookended before and after. We made sure that logistically there was some connection going on in the morning. We had a little bit more connection after school. And trust me, Michelle's a busy professional mom. And yet she would say, you know what, it's a little bit more work at the beginning. However, it saves time overall because we're not having to come on the other side and deal with the meltdowns, right, with when our child refuses to get out of the car. We're not having to deal with that. So there is hope for you. There is help for you. There are tools and supports. So definitely reach out. Let me know which of these strategies you're going to try for yourself or your kids. Let me know what's helped. And if you are still stuck, if you or your child is in failure and you need someone to come and walk beside you and get you the help that you need, then reach out. Let's have a strategy call. Let's figure this out.